Hey friends, Phil Ebner here, and in this tutorial I'm going to be editing some photos in Adobe Lightroom. I took a bunch of flower shots this past weekend at a local botanical garden, and here are some of my favorite pics. And this is going to be a super laid back sort of editing video. I'm using Lightroom Classic. Here's a quick before and after of what I did to one photo. And it's super basic. I'm working with the Fujifilm X-T4. I shot with the 80mm macro lens, and the colors and everything I thought came out really good, just straight from camera. And so there's not much that I'm doing to these photos, but you never know. Let's see if I get some creative shots. So I'm just gonna edit, and you can follow along. I hope you enjoy this, and we'll hopefully you learn a couple things, or at least understand my technique. So here, I'm going to move on to this photo right here and basically do a very similar edit. This is a California poppy, and the colors themselves, I think, are pretty spot on. So what I typically do is start with the color, the white balance, move on to tone, the overall exposure, and then play around with the other tools as well. So let's get into it. Actually, the very first thing I typically do is crop, because I want to make sure that I'm only editing the parts of the photo that I'm going to end up with in my final crop. So, all right, so I punched in just a little bit, and now that I'm looking at full screen, the colors, the tint might be slightly off. I might punch up the tint just a little bit. I think the green of the background maybe overpowered it just a little bit. Overall, though, I think pretty good. If I want to warm it up, I can, but I think I liked how it was regular. Now with the exposure, it's pretty spot on. Sometimes in this harsh sunlight, I might bring down my highlights, which brings back some of those details. You can see here, the petal right here is a little bit out of focus. I was using a pretty open aperture, so it's really focused on this outer petal right here. I'm going to try to bring back some of that detail a little bit with some texture, but bringing down the highlights looks pretty good to bring back some of that texture. In terms of overall contrast, I typically don't do this, but I might just jump down to the tone curve, bring down some of those shadows, the blacks, add back a little bit of contrast in those highlights, and I think that makes it pop really well. So before and after, a little bit goes a long way. Now I'm going to play with the texture just to bring back or try to enhance some of that texture you see here on the flower itself, which I think looks pretty good. Vibrance and saturation, I did use the Astia profile for this photo, and so that is a little bit of a muted color saturation. So I could go in here, boost the overall saturation, but I think what I'm going to do is go down to our HSL under saturation, use the color picker, and just go straight into the oranges. Just boost a little bit. I don't want it to boost too much, and then go back into the greens in the background, which I like that contrast and that balance between the greens and the oranges here. So that looks pretty good, just like that. You could turn this on and off just like so, just to see. It's pretty dang subtle, but it adds a little bit. Overall, the detail of this photo I think is good. The standard sharpening that's applied to raw photos looks good to me. The last thing I might check out for this photo is a vignette. So I don't want to go too crazy, but I think a little bit of a vignette. I like to feather it up all the way, drop that midpoint. Looks pretty good actually for this flower photo. So let's see the before and after. Subtle edits, but I think it looks pretty good. So when I'm happy with those colors that I've made, I'm just going to copy this and apply it to my other poppy photos. So I'm going to take everything except for my effects, the post-crop vignetting, and crop I don't have, so everything else is fine. And you might hear my son in the background. They're playing outside, so that's hopefully not too distracting. And then I'm just going to apply it. So pasting, Command V. Now for this photo, I think the overall exposure is just a little bit down, so I'm going to boost my exposure up just a little bit overall, maybe even just bring up my shadows, And now with this new settings, I'm going to copy it, Command C, copy again, and go to my next photo. I really like this one, just the details of the petal in the background. Here we have some layering. I'm not sure which one I like best of these two. Tell me what you think in the comments, which one you like better. I was trying to get some creative shots of these petals for the photo contest, but I also think choosing like 3 of these photos, like this one, maybe this one, or that one, and then this last one would make a really good set of photos to print out on the wall. I think again, this one just overall exposure is just a little bit down. So that's at plus 70. I'm gonna boost this one up to plus 70 as well. Yeah, what do you guys think? Do you like that? All right, so the next thing I might do is I might play around with pasting those same photos edits to this photo, even though it's a different color. I'm gonna set my white balance to as shot, which is pretty close. And I like applying those same edits to these other photos because then the photos across this set, if I'm posting it on social media, look very similar. So let's do as shot. I'm going to copy those settings again, so that's just how it is. And then this one, I'm going to drop my exposure. This one, I'm wondering what it would look like if I rotate it. Nah. That's the right way, but maybe if I crop it in just a little bit. Something like that. Looks pretty good. And for this photo, I might add a little bit of a vignette in the background. Not in the background, to the edge. All right, now you're really gonna hear those kids in the background. Hopefully this Heil PR40 microphone is doing a good job at removing that background noise of the kids riding around on their toys. This one, you know what I'm doing though, I realize, which I might want to go back and edit that purple flower photo, is the HSL settings isn't right for these photos. So I might go in here, reset that, boost the reg just a little bit. It's a subtle difference. It's not going to be that different than what the Poppy photo edits were. Something else you can do is play around with the hue. If you want to get a little bit more creative with your photography, say this green isn't the green I like, I want to make it more of like a green, or it's really taking the yellows, which I see when I select that. Taking that yellow and making it more green. Might go in here too. Something like that might look a little bit more interesting. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of completely changing up the colors in a photo like this because I like the natural colors. But if you want to get creative. So I'm going to copy these settings and go to this photo, which is the same type of flower, and paste them. So you can really see how those greens popped when I pasted them there. And then here as well, I'm going to crop in. The focus of this photo is really the petal with the water droplets at the top like that. So I wonder if I even cropped it like this, might look good. I kind of like the other aspect for this photo. This photo isn't my favorite because I wish the whole flower was actually in focus, but it's not. All right, so here's another one of those photos that's just those petals. Just pasting those settings again. Let me just reset our HSL. Now, some of you might be like, Phil, why didn't you just copy it without the hue, saturation, luminance settings? That's a good point. This one, I think I want to play around with the exposure a little bit more. This one, I think I shot it a little bit overexposed. So maybe bring down the entire exposure and bring it back up those shadows and bring down those blacks, keeping that contrast, but making sure everything is exposed. This isn't one of my favorite photos. It's like super abstract, so maybe that's what you like, but it's a little bit too out of focus for my liking. This one, this flower stands out a lot. So again, gonna just paste those settings. I will reset our HSL. Just double clicking any of these sliders in Lightroom does that. And then here, let's crop first so that I can really see what I'm working with or what I want to work with. Something like this. I kind of like the negative space. I'm not sure if I want it centered, off to the side. Kind of like it just centered at the bottom of the frame. I don't know. That doesn't seem balanced to me. We'll start there. We'll work with this. Now we have this beautiful purple color that I'm going to try to boost. Now I could take my saturation HSL picker. Let's go into that purple. And for sure, that's bringing up that purple. And then maybe we'll see if the green we want to boost, or you might want to desaturate a little bit, depending on if you want that flower to stand out or not. I'm going to leave the green as is, though. I might just take this purple slider even more, maybe take the magenta. I know there's some magenta down there. Once you kind of know what color, and you could do that visually, obviously, but also by picking the color first, you know exactly what color you're picking or not. You can then take your sliders and adjust according to how you like it. Now for this one, let's see, if I bring down my shadows, I want to bring down those highlights just because it's a little bit overexposed, and then also add some vignetting. So I know I'm going fast through these edits. If you're trying to learn how to edit, this probably isn't the best video for you. This is more if you already know how to edit with Lightroom and you're just looking for examples of how someone may edit a photo. I do have a full Lightroom editing course, which might help you if you're getting started. Now, clarity is another slider that I haven't really touched, and I'm not going to work with for this set of photos, but that can boost the details and add a more sort of HDR effect to your photos, which can be nice for flower and nature photography. All right, so a couple more. This one's interesting. I'm just going to paste those settings. See, those settings don't work for this photo. So let's go, let's go in here. So the settings that I did, let's reset this and our hue. So those did not work for that setting. This was at a different part of the garden. Maybe it's just the color of the flower. Maybe it's how the sun was shining, but that just didn't work for those photos. I'm going to bring down the contrast. This one, I want to be fun, a little bit different, and change the contrast quite a bit. So I want more contrast. I don't want to overexpose it though. So this one I might not post in the same sort of set as the other photos, because I think I want like a similar style when I'm posting a carousel of photos on Instagram or whatever. But for something completely different, this looks kind of neat. You can see the before and after. All right, last photos I'm going to edit. So these are a couple photos, and I mentioned this in the photo challenge video that I posted. And all these photos come from a weekly photo challenge that we do with our Photography and Friends Facebook group, which is a group for all of our students that are in our photography classes. So every week we prompt the students to take a certain type of photo, and this week was flower photography. And also, being at the botanical gardens, I was just looking for something a little bit more creative. And so I saw this man watering the flowers, and I thought that might be sort of an interesting photo to capture. So let's go ahead. I'm going to edit this one from scratch. I'm going to crop it in. I don't like how there's this post right here on the left with this golf ball. I think that distracts from the photo. Now I could try to remove it with like the clone tool, but I think just cropping it like that is good. Now we also have this golf ball right here. So let's go ahead and just take our clone or our healing brush tool. You could use either clone or healing brush. I'm going to start with the healing brush and just brush this out and see what happens. Can you tell? If you didn't see this photo before, let's see. Let's get rid of that. Let's see if I just take out this whole pull right here. If you didn't see this before, I feel like you wouldn't even see it, right? That's pretty good. Let's see the before and after. You're not really going to notice it. So that's a pretty good example of using the clone or the healing brush tool. Now, since I did it with that one, let's just remove this one as well. Now you kind of got to pick flowers that are in a similar space, that are similar colors, similar focus, so that it matches up. And again, I think that does a pretty good job. And I think that decreases the distraction of that. All right, so now moving on to our overall exposure. All right, this one, everything is sort of this super flat color exposure. You can see here in the histogram up here, just this big middle sort of hill. And that's typically a good thing when you have that. You have exposures all the way from the highlights and the whites all the way down to the blacks, but I want more contrast. And so first I'm going to bring down my whites just a little bit, bring down my highlights just to bring back some of the details that we lose in the flowers. So you can see here, if I bring down the highlights, you get to see some of that detail again. And then with my blacks, I'm going to bring the blacks down pretty far. So that makes the highlights pop even more from the background. Now the question then is, what do I do with the shadows? Do I bring them up or bring them down even more? I think I'm just going to leave them or maybe bring them up just a tiny bit. Now this might be a case for using a mask, like a graduated filter mask. But first, I'm just going to boost the entire saturation of this photo. Actually, no. Going straight to the HSL as I've been doing. And this time I'm just going to use my slider to bring up our purple. Now this is hue. I want saturation purple. Just a little bit. You can tell if I go too far, it starts to look distorted. Magenta, my yellow, orange. Now green, yeah, I'm gonna bring up my green too. Okay, so I'm bringing up a lot of the colors, but some of the colors I didn't bring up are the blue. I might desaturate the blues just a little bit. Aqua, there's not much aqua in this photo. You can tell when I drag this up and down, there's just not much of that. And red, there's some in the flower and then a little bit on the man's sweater. So maybe decreasing that just a little bit is fine too. All right, so here, let's play around with a graduated filter. So take a graduated filter. Now, I'm wondering if I should apply to the top or the bottom. Let's do one on the top first. So let's just make this big graduated filter, pressing O on your keyboard, selects this little box right here, which shows you what you're applying it to. Now, I'm not sure which way I should go. Should I desaturate so that the foreground stands out even more? Should I decrease sharpness even more to blur it out even more so that the focus is even more on our flowers in the foreground? Should I warm up or cool? Nah, that starts to look over edited pretty fast. I'm just trying to figure out a way to get these flowers in the foreground to stand out even more. So if I decrease clarity a little bit. Now, see, bringing down the overall exposure, it starts, again, that starts to look a little bit over-edited in my opinion. It doesn't look natural, and so I don't want to do that. I don't want it to be unnatural. Now, I know I decreased all of the exposure to get it to stand out, but what if I brought everything back up? Nah. I think just that little bit of clarity and sharpness decreasing helps a little bit, okay? Now I'm gonna do a new range mask. So I'm just gonna click and drag. Now this time I'm clicking and dragging up, so I am picking the flowers on the bottom. I already have this clarity and sharpness slider set from that last time, so I'm gonna uncheck those. And now this time, maybe I will add some clarity and sharpness so that these flowers in the foreground really start to stand out. Just playing around. Maybe a little bit of a decrease in saturation works good for this one because it was still a little bit overexposed. Now, if we increase saturation overall of just everything down here, that looks kind of nice too. So you're always balancing what looks natural versus unnatural. So we can see the before and after. Before and after. I actually think it's a pretty neat photo overall. I might just go in here, overall tone curve, see if just adding a little bit more contrast really makes it pop even more. Definitely over edited compared to my previous photos. And I would probably step away from the computer, come back and see if I really like this edit. But right now I kind of like it. Now I'm just gonna copy these settings. So I'm gonna copy everything. Crop, not crop, everything. Even our local adjustments. And I'm gonna go to my next photo, which was this one. And now I'm going to paste them and then also go into my local adjustments, which are applied in the same space as the other one. So I'm going to go in here and edit this so that it matches this photo a little bit better. So I'm rotating, so we're just getting that foreground, applying to the foreground, and I think that looks pretty good. And now this one, I'm wondering if I should crop in just a little bit. Something like that looks pretty good. I think now the overall saturation, and maybe it was that gradient filter in the front, looks a little bit off. So I'm gonna take that out just a touch. Let me just take our overall saturation or exposure down just a little bit so that we don't lose those details in those flower petals. It's pretty good though. I like it. Before and after. Cool. All right, so that is it for this Lightroom tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got some ideas for how I like to edit my photos. Hopefully it was just relaxing to watch some flowers being edited in the background while you edit your own photos or whatever. So hit that thumbs up button. Like and comment, subscribe if you're not subscribed, and I'll see you in another video. And make sure you check out our challenges. If you're in our class, head over to the Facebook group. And if you're not in a class, head over to videoschool.com and join a photography class, and you get access to our student community that has lots of fun activities, feedback, live streams, tons of other resources to help you become a better photographer. Thanks so much, and we'll see you in another video. Bye.